Guess what, Lions? For as little as $5 a month, you can get access to exclusive bonus audio content and help this program grow by joining the Lions of Liberty Pride. To learn more, head over to lionsofliberty.com/support.
Welcome to Felony Friday, a presentation of the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here is your host, John Odermatt.
Felons, friends, and freedom lovers, welcome back to another edition of Felony Friday, a weekly show here on the Lions of Liberty podcast. Of course, every single Friday, I focus on exposing injustice in this nation's broken criminal justice system. Now, this is only one of 3 shows that we have here on Lions of Liberty. We kick off every week on Monday. That's when most people kick off their weeks, with a show hosted by Mark Clare. It's our longest running program. And Mark, most of the time, is interviewing leaders in the liberty movement. He also hosts some roundtable discussions. Our hit Libertarians in Living Rooms Drinking Liquor normally appears every Monday. On Wednesday, we have a more lighthearted show where our host Brian McWilliams hosts Electric Liberty Land, a weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. And of course, this show, Felony Friday, a look at the criminal justice system every single Friday. Now, just a quick warning at the top of the show here before we get started. Now, the content of today's show that my guest and I discuss, it's tragic and it's definitely going to be a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of listeners to hear. It might not be best to listen with young children around. You know, I'm not going to tell you guys how to run your life, but I would say if you have some young children, you probably want to listen to this one by yourself first, and then you be the judge if you want them to hear it. It was important to me to state that. However, I don't want that to diminish at all how absolutely crucial the content of today's show is. This is episode 109 of Felony Friday, so that means you'll be able to find the show notes at lionsofliberty.com/FF109. And now just a brief word from the sponsor of today's show. Are you or someone you know facing the prospect of going to prison? Facing a federal case is an extremely stressful time, and you'll be faced with confronting a situation that is both unfamiliar and confusing. You need to contact Dan Weiss, also known as RDAP Dan, and his team of specialists to assist you with fighting for your freedom. Your attorney handles the legal aspects of your case, but your prison consultant, they help you with qualifying for sentence reduction programs, avoiding common mistakes that zap your chances of an early release, and keeping a handle on anxiety and stress during this process. You can find out more and schedule a free consultation with Dan and his team by visiting lionsofliberty.com/RDAP. That's lionsofliberty.com/RDAP. My guest today on Felony Friday is David McNamar. David is a listener of this show. He's a member of the Lions of Liberty Forum. And a couple weeks ago, last month, the end of December, he reached out to me and inquired if I'd be interested in having him on the show to share his story. And David's story is very tragic. It's something that personally I'm not able to imagine what it's like to go through something like David has gone through in his life. And I'm not going to get into what that is right now because most of the show is going to talk about that. Without any further ado, David, welcome to Felony Friday.
Thank you, John. It's nice to talk to you.
Well, thank you for agreeing to come on the show and talking about sharing your story. I know this is definitely not something that's going to be easy for you to go through, but as we talked about when we were going back and forth in Facebook Messenger, this is something that I think a lot of times people see accidents like this, things that happen, and they read a headline and blame is assigned without knowing exactly the details of the story, and also what happens after that, the criminal justice system aspect of it. So I want to get through all of that before we get into that, though, just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better and get to know your background and the things leading up to this story. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Ellington, Connecticut. It's very small cow town. I didn't have a messed up life or anything like that. I had both my parents were part of the picture. I had two older brothers, an older sister. I was technically considered an only child. They were much older than I was. I was kind of not a mistake, but I was unplanned. I grew up, in a normal house. There was no abuse. My father was a previous, he was a drug addict well before I was born, and it caused him a lot of health problems. And then ultimately, he turned to religion to find his way out. But I believe that addiction is a hereditary thing, and it has definitely been passed down to his children. Alcoholism. I got an Irish last name. Come from a family of alcoholics. And when I hit my teenage years, I started to rebel and get into alcohol and partying, and dropped out of school, started working. Kind of went from there on my own path.
Right. So you didn't have any run-ins with the law growing up, any arrests, anything like that?
It was, like I said, it was such a small town. We didn't even have our own police force. We had, they call them, in Connecticut, they call them resident state troopers. And these guys were basically homegrown people from Ellington that were assigned back to Ellington because of their roots. And, they... To be honest, they almost enabled us because they were very, very lenient with us. They would do anything that they could to just not bring us in and not have to do the paperwork, which I was fine with. It wasn't anything crazy where, I didn't grow up in a city. I grew up in it's actually Ellington, Connecticut. If you look into it, it's a very, they call them the Swiss religions. It's almost like an Amish offset, and they're very, very strict, like religious people. We couldn't have any fast food chains in our town, anything like that, because they basically controlled the town. And I grew up in Crystal Lake, which is closer to like Stafford, Connecticut, but. We actually were considered the poor kids of that town.
So let's talk about the accident that occurred, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is 2008 time frame. So how old were you when this happened?
Years ago, I was 22, 23 years old.
Okay, so you're young, to 22-year-old kid at this time, and this is around Christmas time, right?
It was what had happened? My son was born on November 28th, 2008. It was the day after Thanksgiving of that year, and so what happened was I was the girl that I was with. We had an apartment in Vernon, Connecticut, the next town over from Ellington. I really haven't strayed far from where I grew up. What had happened was he was born. We took our son home, and then what happened was Christmas Eve of that year. He was about a month old, just about a month old, and we came home from doing the family thing. Got to our apartment, and we're coming down the road, and we just see a million fire trucks and police officers right in front of our building. We couldn't even get close to it. So I parked the car on the side of the road, and we walk up to the house, and the police tell us what happened. And what had happened was this 16-year-old kid tried to steal his mom's car, but apparently had never driven a car before, and crashed it directly into our apartment unit. They could not get a building inspector out to say that the building was safe to enter, so they condemned the whole building, and said, okay, well, basically we're gonna put you in a hotel, and that's that. You can't go in. It's Christmas Eve. Nobody's gonna come out. So what they did was they put us in a hotel. It's actually on the Vernon, Connecticut, and Manchester town line in Connecticut. And they told us that the Red Cross was going to show up the next morning, which would be Christmas morning, and that they were going to take care of everything that we needed. So the only thing that we had for my son, my 1-month-old son to sleep in was his car seat, which is, obviously not the ideal situation to be in. And I will also say that this is, one of, knowing how I've always been like this crazy reckless sleeper where I will toss and turn and will end up in the weirdest positions when I do fall asleep. So this was not the ideal situation to be in. We wake up on Christmas morning. The Red Cross is there waiting for us, and they hand me a debit card. Basically, they said, "There's $750 on here. You go out and get whatever you need." Well, I looked at the guy and I said, it's Christmas morning at 8:00. There's nothing is going to be open today where I could get a pack and play. I could get a portable crib, something like that. And he's like, we're not really equipped for that. So, this is what we can do for you. We're all completely stressed out. The entire building had to get evacuated. It was a 6-family unit, like the home that got hit. So there's six families that are just out on their asses right now, and we're living in this hotel. And we ended up staying there for it was over a week after the car guy, hit us. So again, we tried to make the best of the day. On, Christmas Day, we went to my family's house. It was Christmas, and I this is where I don't want to sound like I'm trying to make excuses for myself and what happened, but I probably had maybe a little over a 6-pack of beer, with my family, with my brothers. My grandfather was still around. We just basically did the normal holiday thing. We got back to the hotel room that night, probably around 9:00. My son James woke up at about midnight, and I was still up. I was, my mind was kind of reeling about just, everything, when are we going to go home? He woke up. I knew that the girl that, his mother was stressed out. She was sleeping at the time. So I made the dumbest choice of my entire life. And I picked my son up out of the car seat. I laid down it was a double bedroom. I laid down on one of the beds with him, and I attempted to rock him back to sleep. And in the process, I fell asleep. Now, he was not breastfeeding, so we kind of had a set time. So I had an alarm on my phone that would go off. And the alarm went off at 5 a.m., and I woke up. And during the night, I had rolled over on top of it. I am immediately, I knew right from the get-go that he was gone. I called 911. They told me, okay, we're sending someone over there right now. Just they told me open his mouth. And I, take 2 fingers, open his mouth, and try to, start performing CPR. And when I opened his mouth, his tongue was black, and it was just, it was almost out of body. It was at that point where I knew he was gone. And there's one thing that, there's this one guy, and I've seen him a couple times since then, because, again, I still live in Vernon, and it was a Vernon police officer who first came running through the door, and I'll never forget that guy's face. I can only imagine what I looked like, but that cop's face has haunted me, because he knew too. And when I saw it on his face, I knew what was going on. I knew that there wasn't a chance of, reviving him. But again, so what came of it was we got to the hospital. We were in that cop in the back seat of his car following the ambulance. And when it really hit me was when, we were right behind the ambulance, and the ambulance turned off the lights while we were following, and I knew, that's it. If they're turning those lights off right now when, we're following them like this, it's no longer an emergency. He was gone.
Yeah, I don't know what to say, man. I mean, to go through that's every parent's nightmare, obviously.
Yeah.
So after you bury your son, and I'm sure that sent you and your girlfriend at the time into down a rough road.
I mean, it was the road to hell. I mean, to be completely honest, I remember my oldest brother is actually a pastor of a Pentecostal church, and he showed up, and just he had kids, he has kids, just seeing his face, there was just so much that was just, it was the hardest experience of my life. Putting him in the ground, just seeing him after, giving him away at the hospital, and when they took him away and, performed the autopsy because they had to, legally they had to, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. It's one of those things where it's just not the natural order of things, so.
Yeah, absolutely. No parent ever even considers or wants to consider the chance that they'll bury their child. After this happens, when was the first time that you heard or thought or were told that there might be criminal charges against you? Well,
we had to, we had to make statements. We had to go to because like I said, what ended up happening was that the hotel itself that we were put in, it's directly split on the town line of Manchester and Vernon, Connecticut. So Manchester took jurisdiction of the case. And what part of my theory as to why the Manchester police came down on me so hard was 2 nights after this had happened, I was an absolute mess. And we were still at the hotel. So I had a very close friend of mine from kindergarten. He was with me. And I had walked outside just to get some air because I just couldn't be in that building anymore. And I was just absolutely losing my mind. And outside the door of the hotel, this guy walks by with his girlfriend while I'm, bawling, and my friend is consoling me, and he called me a pussy. And I kind of lost it. And I charged after him, and I pinned the guy against his car, and my buddy was able to, he grabbed me and pulled me off, said, "Dave, just calm down." And this guy says, well, I'm calling the cops. He calls the cops, and I knew it was coming, so I sat outside and I waited for it. three of the Vernon police officers showed up, and they started talking to me. They were aware of the situation, so I explained who I was, and they were like, okay, well, we'd like to take you to Rockville Hospital, which is part of Vernon, to get you, looked at and evaluated. And I was fine with that. I was going to go with them. And as I was talking to them, 7 Manchester police cruisers come around the other side of the hotel. And they basically said, nope, you guys get out of here. This is our case. And they wanted to bring me to Manchester, which is where I had just given my son away. So I started pleading with them to, can you just let me go with them? I will, go to Rockville. It would, probably be a little bit better for me if I'm not in that same emergency room. And nope. And what ended up happening was a guy, I still remember the guy, Sergeant Minor. He came up behind me and he grabbed me by my arm and put me in like an arm lock from behind and jerked my arm up. And I kind of instinctively pulled back, and they all just jumped on me. And I resisted it tooth and nail, and they slammed my head into the vehicle, threw me in the car, and they brought me to Manchester, where I waited for about 3 hours, and a doctor came in and I talked to him. I told him everything that had happened, and he was like, okay, well, it sounds like you're grieving in a very deep way. So do you want to go home? And I said, yes. He said, okay, well, put your clothes on. You're getting out. And at that point, Manchester, I think, really took it kind of personally that I was able to, fight back and get sent home in a couple hours. Because it then took it was almost a year to the day for them to come and arrest me. They charged me with manslaughter in the 2nd degree and risk of injury to a minor in the 1st degree. And like I said, that's when, that's when everything started with the court system. I had no clue that it was coming.
I want to share with you all a very important service that can help you or someone you know who's going to prison. As I've documented many times on this show, sometimes even good people end up in prison. And facing a federal sentence can be an incredibly stress-filled time. If you're facing this reality, then you need to contact Dan Wise, also known as RDAP Dan. I promise you that Dan and his team of prison consultants will reduce your stress level immediately after speaking with them on the phone. If you retain Dan's services, you can call him and his team any time of day or night, giving you and your loved ones open access, support, and answers. Dan and his team assist with the following aspects of the process: narrative letters to the judge, character reference letters, RDAP qualification, prison designation, online reputation management, mindset coaching, and also additional halfway house time to shorten your time in prison. Now, don't sleep on this one, guys. You can find out more and schedule a free consultation with Dan and his team by visiting lionsofliberty.com/RDAP. That's lionsofliberty.com/RDAP. That was my next question. So you had no warning. They just showed up at your door.
It was 11 months to the day after my son's death. I got a knock at the door at about 10 o'clock in the morning. In this time period, I will say, I mean, I like to drink before. I was, a 22-year-old kid, 23-year-old kid, and it's what I did. I was living my life. That's how I wanted to live my life. But when this happened, I really I kind of threw my life away. I wanted to kill myself, but I didn't have it in me to, take a knife to my wrist or put a gun to my head. So I was pretty set on drinking myself to death. It was bad. It was very bad. To the point where, I mean, dude, I was drinking a 12-pack of Natty Ice a day. And if I didn't have that, I couldn't fall asleep.
Natty Ice, man. That's that's like a chunky beer. It's
I think about it now, and I like kind of want to puke in my mouth a little bit. But so I get that knock at that door. It was about 10:30 in the morning. And I knew what it was as soon as because a cops knock. They don't knock like normal people. They're really rapping at your door, and I was like, oh, what the, there's cops at my door. And I opened the door, and it was, David, you're coming with us. And I was, what the fuck's going on? Well, and then you're under arrest for manslaughter in the second degree, and like I said, risk of injury to a minor, and in the first degree. And I was just, like I said, I mean, at that point, I was so delirious about what was going on. Like, I didn't even really understand until I got sent to county, and I knew they put my bail so high, there was no chance, I didn't grow up with any kind of money. My family didn't have any kind of money like that. There was no chance that I was gonna get out, even if they had gotten a bail bondsman. It was a ridiculous amount of money. It was. I had $100,000 bond on me. So, I said it was Manchester court that was conducting everything, which has their own courthouse and everything like that. It's their own district. I spent about 2 months in county, which anybody who has been to jail knows that, when you get sent to county, like the county lockups, especially in Connecticut, there's only 2 of them. So they're completely overcrowded, and it's just, it's not like a normal jail situation. You're in there with guys coming off of heroin, coming off of meth, coming off of any PCP. That was the worst. Because when I first got in, they put me on suicide watch because of the nature of the crime that I was charged with and everything that was going on. They put me on suicide watch. So I was for a week and a half. I was first of all detoxing off the alcohol, which Jesus Christ, that was one of the worst experiences of my life. I lost 20 pounds in a week. I couldn't hold food down. I couldn't, and in the same time, I'm like realizing like, this is where my decisions have led me. There was a guy across the hall who was coming off of PCP, and was just constantly screaming, throwing feces and cups of piss out the little hole in the door. I mean, it was a nightmare. There was 2 other guys just screaming constantly all night. It was incredibly inhumane because just nobody came, nobody checked on nope, they're there. They got their this giant Teflon bodysuit that goes down. It's like a bulletproof vest basically that goes from they just wrap around you and it goes down to your knees, so that you can't, tear it apart and hang yourself with.
So no medical supervision in any way whatsoever.
Every 4 hours somebody would come in and take my blood pressure and check my pulse and then just walk away. And that one, like I said, I was in there like that for a week and a half, and it's even worse than what solitary is because the lights are on 24/7 so that they can look in on you at any time. And like I said, it's constant scream, just people screaming and yelling for help and needing something, and just there's no answer to it. It's just, and the only answer that you get is shut the fuck up, shut up. You're fine. You're fine. Shut up.
So how long did it take when you were going through withdrawal? How many, you said over a week?
Yeah, it took me about a week, yeah. A week of withdrawals. Like I said, I just constant shake. It was terrible, you know.
Did they move you after that, or?
Yeah, after I was cleared by the county psychologist, they put me into the dorms, which is, that's just another nightmare. Because it's just so filthy. Because it's so, like I said, just so overpopulated. I mean, we couldn't even go to the gym. This was also, it's like, I was arrested in October. So going into it, I was, getting into winter. And that's when a lot of people come in, because a lot of, there's an insane amount of people who are, homeless, that will go out and basically commit this bullshit, crime that they play the system. They know what they're going to get. They know what they're going to get sentenced to. So right around October, they'll go out and commit some bullshit crime and get put in the county for 2-3 months, wait out the cold, and then they're back out on the street. And that's how a lot of people, I met, I can't even tell you how many people that I met that told me that's what they do. That it's like a lifestyle to them.
Yeah, what a sad way to live.
It is. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But with my case, what ended up happening, I like I said, I was in Manchester, and I didn't have any money. I didn't have any money for an attorney, anything like that. I didn't even have a public defender when I was going to Manchester, because at the time, the prosecutor and the judge couldn't decide on what they wanted to do with me. And it got, basically, it ultimately is what ended up saving me from, because I was facing 10 to 20 years for the 2 charges. And what ended up saving me was they basically said, and they were like, okay, you know what? We don't even want to touch this case. We're going to send your case up to Part A court in Hartford, which is the capital,
What does that mean, Part A court?
Part A court, basically, you're going up there with the worst of offenders. Like, it's like the top tier of crimes. Murder, rape, armed robbery, like crazy shit. So that's where I got sent to Hartford, and I was appointed a public defender. And what I will say, I will give this guy the most credit in the world, because for a public defender, and I'd had little bouts with the law beforehand. Public defenders, they're paid shit and they don't want to do anything. It's a minimal amount of work just to get my caseload off. But this guy up there, he really went above and beyond and went nuts on my case. The other thing was, at that point, I don't think he even had to, because I was sitting next to, I remember one specific instance where I was in that court up in Hartford, and I was sitting next to about 3 guys, and there was, everybody was talking about, what they were there for, except, I was sitting next to this one guy who was just, dead silent. And then they brought us all in, and this guy was a Haitian immigrant, Haitian illegal immigrant, who had raped an 11-year-old girl.
Jeez.
And so I'm up there and I'm sitting there and I wouldn't have known it, because like I said, he was silent, but the charges got read in front of us. They lined us up, they bring us all in and sit us up front, and we heard the charges against him, and it was actually his sentencing. That day was his sentencing, and they gave him 15 years in prison and then deportation back to Haiti. Which, to me, I'm sitting there like, why? I mean, this is right after that earthquake happened. Why not just, you're going to pay $35,000 a year for this guy to have a roof over his head after what he did, and then send him back to Haiti at the end of it. What's the point?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's neither here nor there. But
kind of, just to touch on that. That kind of goes into the mentality that prison is a punishment more than anything. I mean, if they were trying, because why would you try to reform someone and then send them out of the country? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I digress. Continue.
The judge that I ended up getting, and this is where everything I really saw a lot of screwed up stuff, was where there's this program in Hartford. I don't know if you want me to name it, because it's actually a well-known, it's a nationally known business that funds these rehab programs, basically.
You can name it if you want to. I'm not gonna.
Okay. Well, the Salvation Army has these things called adult rehabilitation centers. And there's one in Hartford. The completion rate of this program is something like 1 out of every 30 to 40 guys or girls, whatever. It's a very low completion rate. And so the judge basically, after everything that my public defender did, presenting the facts about, the fact that this, had I been home, had that kid never driven into my apartment, I would never have been in this situation. It wouldn't have happened. It would not have happened. And so this guy, his name was Judge Gold. He gave me this chance. He said, "Look, I'm going to put you into this program. This program is extremely hard to complete. This is your one shot." And obviously I'm going to agree. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to avoid, because at that point I was in for, it was like over 5 months that I was sitting in county. And this program was a 9-month inpatient program. And they called it a work therapy program. So basically what happens in this work therapy program is, even though it's the Salvation Army is its own independent company, where I started to see a lot of screwed up things happening in this treatment program was that it's considered a privately owned company that provides this service for people. But as soon as you get out, and I remember when they put me into this program, the guy who was doing my outtake from the county said, "Look, we've had people go to this place. Just remember, you're still our property." That's what he told me. That was his exact words. He said, "You're still our property." So I was still technically part of the Department of Corrections when I got into this program. And then I get into this program, and the Salvation Army is a religious-based program, a Christian-based program. But as soon as we got in there, the first thing that they did was they brought us to the Connecticut Department of Social Services. And they forced us to sign up for SNAP benefits and health insurance. Like literally, second day that I was there, that's what they did. They took us, me and a couple other guys that were coming out of prison, for this program, because like I said, it was the judge basically used this as, this is your one shot at redemption. And he put us in there. And then when we got in there, like I said, they put us right on state program, even though their claim is that everything that they sell in their stores if you go to a Salvation Army store, is what supports these adult rehabilitation centers. So we get in there, and like I said, I went in there that day when I got released. I went into this program with 4 other guys. I was the only guy that made it out. I'm the only guy that graduated because, like I said, I had so much. I mean, my life was riding on it.
So what do you attribute that to? Other than, I mean, just because everything was riding on it, you were able to just push your way through, or?
Well, you know what? There was, they did, part of the program is that we had to do AA. And I really, I'm sober now, but I don't do AA because it is there's a lot of group mentality to it. And I saw a lot of, bullshit drama going on in it. But it did help me when we first got in because I got a sponsor, and the sponsor ended up, after, I told my story and I told what was going on, we were allowed to leave this program and go to like outside AA meetings. And this guy really kind of pushed me to tell my story as I'm telling it now. And the reaction that I saw from people, I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I've been to, and where, you'll get a speaker and then you get a bunch of, speaker speaks for like 45 minutes, half hour, whatever, and then you have a half hour to 20 minutes people responding to it. And the first time that he actually made me do a speaker meeting, I just remember it was dead silent. And everybody just looked at it, and then finally one guy spoke up. He said, I don't know how many meetings you've been doing. I know that you're probably used to people responding, but I don't think anybody knows how to respond to you right now. And I accepted that, but it's definitely something that with everything that's happened, what I have learned is that I do have a form of PTSD. I don't sleep well at night. Even still, it's been 8 years, and I still don't sleep well at night. I have a 2-year-old son, almost 3, and his mother was dead set on co-sleep, and it's just something that, I mean, I can't tell you how many nights I've spent on the couch because of it, because I can't, I've woken up, I've thrown her off the bed before because it just, you wake up in that state and it's, you're freaking out. And it's something that I didn't want to accept for a long time that I had, because, I have a cousin who was first wave into Baghdad when America went in back in 2003. And I mean, that kid was, one of my closest cousins, and I saw what it did to him and how screwed up he was from the stuff that he saw. And it's just like, I don't have PTSD. No, I don't. But then it was something that was actually hard to accept for me. That, I did have trauma from what had happened. But, getting back to the program itself, just the injustice and the hypocrisy of what I saw in there was unreal, especially coming from a company and a group that claims to be Christian. I grew up, my family, like I said, my father was very religious because that's, what took him out of his addictions. And then going into this place, I thought it was going to be, a Christ-like, form of rehabilitation. And these people were, one of the guys that I went into the program with was gay. And they threw him back in jail because he would not say that. That's not why, that was not the official reason that they gave for kicking him out. But that was the reason they kicked him out and threw him back into the court system, was because he was gay. There was another guy who was basically, he said he was an atheist. And when things went wrong in the program, he was put on a house restriction where you can't leave, and his heart medicine ran out. And they said, okay, well, you can't go get your medicine, you're on house restriction. So, okay, well, what are you going to do? I either have to go get my medicine or what? So this program, again, threw this guy back in prison because he was an atheist. And whereas with the justice system, there's definitely a million problems, but with the treatment is what I saw with that program, especially being, they say it's private, but the whole thing is being funded by the state. And then they're throwing guys back in due to religious beliefs, which is a complete contradiction between the separation of church and state.
Exactly.
The place that I was at was in Hartford. I'm not going to name the specific names of the people running it. I could, but I'm not going to do that. They were cherry picking what they wanted for the people that they wanted there. And then if you did not fit that mold when you got in there, they'd throw you right back out. Not to mention that this place is also, it's called a work therapy program. So we were working 40 hours plus a week. And they said that's what provided us our food, even though we were signed up and we were, they were giving, when I got out, they gave me my SNAP card. I went until I found a job, until I got in with the company that I'm in now, which I've been for 8 years. They were giving me like $340 a month for benefits. And that was when I was in there. So they were taking that money, and that's how we were fed. But then we were doing 40 hours of work a week for free. 40 hours plus. It was wild.
It's certainly a messed up system, sort of a quasi crony system where they're taking money from the government, but also taking money from private charity, but not telling the people giving money through private charity that they're taking money from the government. Exactly.
And it was they couldn't keep counselors there, like actual addiction counselors, like people who had gone to school would come in there as like an entry-level job, and they would stay there. I was in there 9 months, and I saw about 5 or 6 of my own counselors, because you each get assigned a counselor. They couldn't keep them because they'd get in there and they say, "What? This is not how you help a person who has an addiction." It was wild.
Yeah, it seems like the objective. I don't know what the objective was, but it doesn't sound like it was to help addicts, to help people become reformed and reintegrate into society. Not to say that didn't happen, because it sounds like that did happen with you. Maybe that was everything done on your own. Maybe that was self-motivated and self-actualization, not really the work of this program. But it definitely puts into question their tactics. They certainly sound pretty shady. And David, I want to thank you for coming on the show to talk about everything that's happened to you over the past 8 years. I give you immense credit to come forward and share this story on a show like this. Hopefully, and I'm sure there are people out there who are suffering through similar situations, and hopefully this can help at least one person.
Definitely know that there are, and I know you asked if I would kind of touch on where I really turned into focusing on liberty, and that's really where it did lead me, was because what I ultimately realized was There was a quote that I had read when I was in high school. We kind of briefly touched on the book Paradise Lost, which is the kind of like this weird. It's like the weird story about how the devil got thrown out of heaven and everything. But there's a quote in there that really, really kind of defined my climb out of where I was, and it's that it was used in Seven and everything. The movie Seven. Long is the road and hard that out of hell leads up to the light. And what I learned in that program was that, if you want to make a change in your life, you can ask for help, but you can't change your own, you can't expect others to change your own life. It's something that you have to commit to. It's something that you have to work at every day. Especially if you're addicted to any kind of substance. I don't care whether it's alcohol, which was mine. That was my drug of choice. Heroin, which I have so many friends and people that I love that have been affected by that. You can't rely on especially the government, to get you out of that. It's something that you have to take on yourself. Which is, I think that is the truest liberty, is to actually become your own person and stop, I guess, lending your desires to the whims of the government or the nanny state, just anything. You have to take control of your own life, which I think that's, the most libertarian thing that you can do is be self-sufficient and self-reliant, and learn the power of yourself and not rely on other people.
100% agree with you, and I think as libertarians we need to do a better job of highlighting that. And that's one of the things I've been doing recently on this show, bringing you on, bringing Colin Krieger on.
Yeah, those are great.
Aaron Seidel, several guests who have been through some pretty rough situations, and we're able to bounce back. So I just want to give you a chance if you want to give any parting words before I let you go.
The only thing that I can say is, you have to be true to yourself. And like I said, relying on, you can have your friends, you can have your family, and that's fine. But asking the state itself to try and take care of you, that's just not the answer to go with. I mean, that's what I learned from my time in the system, was that you have to actually do it for yourself. You can't rely on the system to make choices for you, or you're going to always be part of that system, and you will never have your own identity.
That's sound advice. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing this story.
I really appreciate it, John. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for listening to today's show. I think we can all agree that this was both a very important topic, but also very uncomfortable. I give David tremendous credit for having the courage to share his story. And hopefully, if there's somebody out there going through a rough time, something similar to this, I hope that David's story and the way he's been able to move on with his life and improve his life, I hope that gives people hope. That's all I'm going to say about today's interview. I just want to add one thing, guys, and I think you know what that is. If you aren't in the Lions of Liberty Pride, get on it, guys. Get in the Pride. We have, as of recording time, I think 87 members in the Pride. January was a record-setting month. We're well on our way to our next goal of $1,000 per month. Right now, we're at like $800 and change. So a little less than $200 in pledges and subscriptions to get to that $1,000 per month. Once we hit that $1,000 per month level, we are going to be primed and ready to go and attend a bunch of different libertarian events over the next, forever, I guess. You can join the Pride by visiting lionsofliberty.com/support. So, I want to encourage you guys to donate. There's 3 different tiers that we have. The $25 tier which is a lot of fun. It has a weekly conference call every single month. You also get free T-shirts, which is cool, a free koozie. And you get a big discount at the store. The $15 level, you don't get the conference call. You get one T-shirt, one koozie. The $5 level, you don't get the free stuff, but you get access to all of our bonus content, which, of course, you get also at the $10 and $25 level. And all levels get access to our secret Facebook group, the Lions of Liberty Pride. So don't hesitate any longer. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really make an impact and help us to take this show to the next level here. So that's all I got for today. I want to thank you all for listening. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.